1 year ago today, at approximately the same time, Robeson Ben and I were sworn in as the newest commissioners of GECOM to join Sayers Gunraj, who had been sworn in a little before. That 1 year, I thought that we would have been able to keep the oath that we took. At least I would have been able to keep the oath that I took at that time. When I took that oath, the newspapers sought to sensationalize the fact that I said the oath from memory and seemed to want to suggest that I was dissing somebody by not holding the paper and reading. Those of you who know me would know that when I go to do something and when I give a commitment, I commit myself, my heart, my soul, and my energies. And when I take an oath, I internalize what I'm saying. And once I do that, those of you who have followed what I've done in Parliament for so many successive parliaments, when I took the oath as a parliamentarian and as a minister, I never read that oath. I'm a Guyanese, I know my constitution. Part of that oath said that I would serve without fear or favor, affection or ill will. So notwithstanding the fact that we were nominated by the leader of the opposition, according to the provisions of the Constitution, when we go to do that job, if we mean the oath that we took, and I always begin in the name of Allah. If I say silently or orally or audibly, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, it means I begin in the name of Allah. That's the creator that I believe in. And I end by saying, Inshallah, if He wills. And I'm very serious about taking such an oath. And when we say we are serving without fear or favor, even though we have to represent the interests of that large constituency that the opposition represents in Parliament, we have to, according to our oath, serve without fear or favor, affection or ill will. And I can say to you today that the three commissioners sitting before you have all demonstrated that they honored that oath. The oath went on to say, and in the execution of the duties, we would honor, uphold, and preserve the Constitution of the Republic of Guyana. Constitution, very serious and all-encompassing document. I'm a lawyer. So when I did my law studies, I had to have a copy of the Constitution. When I became a minister and member of Parliament, it was more important for me to have that Constitution and to know what's inside. And when I was asked, as I'm sure Robeson would have done and Sayes would have done before me, to agree to serve as a member of the Elections Commission, we would have gone to our Constitution, which is the only place there resides provisions concerning the Commission and what the Commission's mandate is. And I read Article 161A1, that says, the Elections Commission shall be responsible for the efficient functioning of the Secretariat of the Commission. That Secretariat, which shall comprise the officers and employees of the Commission, and for the appointment of all the staff to the offices thereof, inclusive of all temporary staff, recruited for the purposes of boundary demarcation, registration of persons, and elections, and shall have the power to remove and to exercise disciplinary control over such staff. I knew that being a member of the Commission, that was one of the things that, as a member of the Commission, that body was expected to do that. I have spent 1 year, together with my colleagues, Robeson more vocal and noisy than I am, and I can be very noisy, I tell you, hitting our heads against a wall, a kind of a defense wall that Chairman Steve Surajbali and CEOs, I didn't meet Gokul Budu, but Keith Lowenfield and this secretariat have constructed around the operations of GECOM, in so much that to breach that wall is seen in that commission meeting as an act of treason almost. So questions we ask, we never get answers to. If as part of a commission, we are responsible for the appointment of all the staff to the offices thereof, that is of the Secretariat, inclusive of all temporary staff, meaning all those polling agents and all those presiding officers and returning officers, all that staff, poll clerks and everybody. We're responsible for the appointment of all those staff. Then, at least, we should have some knowledge of how this, I don't want to call them a cabal, but it's more like a cult they've developed, how they go about doing these things. We meet a brick wall every time we ask a question concerning personnel, staff at GECOM.
And procurement.
Well, we come into procurement. Staff I'm talking about first, because that's one of our duties. I have asked time and time again for the name. We have, when we sit at the commission meeting, there is, those of you who have ever gone into that room, there's an organogram behind me. And I ask, may I have the names of the people who currently occupy those positions and when they were appointed? How long they've been on the job, when they were appointed, you know, that kind of thing. To this day, 1 year after I was appointed, I am not privy to those names, except to know 3 names. The CEO, the deputy CEO, and the assistant CEO. They sit with us. And from time to time, 1 or 2 others are called in. A name is thrown at you, and unless you have a photographic memory, you don't remember that name all the time and what exactly the person is doing. And so, when people distrust GECOM, because it's like a secret organization, even lodges give out more information than GECOM does. And lodges are secret organizations. When people distrust GECOM, they have a right to. And today I am saying to Guyana and the constituents who I was asked to represent there, whose interests I'm asked to represent, that I have failed in the oath that I took to represent people, because I cannot get to information that I can use and I can, you know, changes you can make or anything. It is all like a secret. That's one thing. So when I read the newspapers for the past week or 2, not that I like, I read all the newspapers. I don't believe what they say, because 4 newspapers are reporting the same thing, and they got 4 different sides. They tell you 4 different things. So how can you believe what you read, unless you know? But there is all this thing going on. Who buy pliers for $14 million and who buy radios for $100 million, and, you know, those kinds of things, and the things that aren't working and so on. And I called the chairman, because you know what? This Constitution says that there shall be an elections commission for Guyana consisting of a chairman who shall be a full-time chairman and not engage in any other form of employment. So the chairman is full-time. Why is he full-time? Because he's supposed to be there day to day, seeing what is happening in the Secretariat, and then reporting to the Commission when they have a meeting, whether it is monthly, weekly, however, whenever. When I joined the Commission, they have weekly meetings. So we meet every Tuesday. Lunch, and we meet at 1 o'clock. I usually eat my lunch before I go. But there's lunch, there's coffee, you know, lots of food all around. And then when you look, you got a room with a lot of food there too. People who are not attending the meeting, you're having lunch. I don't have to have lunch every day. But all those things cost money. And the chairman is full-time. He's full-time there because we have a job to be responsible for the efficient functioning of the Secretariat of the Commission. So I called the chairman. I said, when all of these supposed things that are happening, because they cannot be coming from the auditors. They cannot tell press what they're finding until they issue a report. And having been on the Public Service Commission, Public Accounts Committee, I'm sorry, falling into Freddie Kissoon's trap. You know, he puts Carville Duncan / BB Shaddick. And so I say Public Service Commission. Having served in the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament for years, I know what supervisory authority means because we had to supervise the audit of the Auditor General. And we didn't have anybody there full-time. Now, if the chairman has to be there full-time, then the supervision has to be led by the chairman. So that when the commission meets, the chairman can say, during the week, these things happened, or, you know, these decisions, these matters arose, and so on, so that the commission as a whole can take decisions. This doesn't happen. So I called the chairman. I said, amazingly though, I said, where were you when all of these things were happening? He said, I tried to insulate myself from those things. These are the chairman's words. I've always insulated myself and the commission from those things. From things like procurement. I said, oh, because I read the Constitution and it says that we are responsible for the smooth functioning of the Secretariat. So how can we insulate ourselves? But you see, since I've joined the Commission, there has been some new things. The Audit Office now joins the list of Schedule 3 organizations, agencies, that draw funds directly from the Consolidated Fund, not from the appropriations in the budget. And the board now, the commission, which is the board of GECOM, has to approve all spending. So this is different from what used to happen. But I thought the chairman was responsible, so he said he insulated himself. Notwithstanding that, he says, I don't know when they're going to finish this audit, I want to answer them. So I said, I thought you said you were insulating yourself and you're going to answer them. This is our chairman, Suraj Badi. A man of many contradictions. And the more you ask questions, the more of those contradictions come out. We're reading all kinds of things. I don't necessarily believe all those things, but they set you thinking. For instance, I've had about 15 phone calls since a picture of a pliers was in the papers and saying GECOM bought nippers and pliers for in excess of $14 million for the elections. And I was asked what they're doing with pliers. I don't know, because I know the ballot boxes have plastic ties as the locks, so you can cut that with a pair of scissors. But even if you're buying pliers, how many pliers $14 million gonna buy? I don't know. But I don't believe the papers, as I say, but it's out there. And people are asking us these questions. And the people that I was asked to represent on GECOM have a right to ask those questions. So I'm saying I failed, I can't answer them. Because no information is forthcoming. Now let me come to the most recent announcement. Well, I don't know if it was an announcement. It was again an article in the Chronicle newspapers that didn't have a name attached to it, so who wrote it, where it is coming from. It doesn't say from the Director of Public Information, this gentleman called Imran Khan. It doesn't say who, but it is an article in Chronicle. But I know Chronicle is a state newspaper. I mean, it's owned by the state. And so I don't expect the Chronicle to be saying things that the government doesn't want it to say. So I take that to mean that it is a kind of an announcement from the government. And that article in yesterday's papers that talks about, I cut it out, the Anna Chronicle, Wednesday, September 21st, I'm ready to go. Chairman, GECOM Chairman, Dr. Steve Surge Bally. Well, I got to tell you something. September 21st is more than a month after this same Chairman Surge Bally, after returning from 3 weeks leave, beginning on the 25th of July and ending on the 16th of August, at the first meeting after he returned, announced to the members of the commission that having been on leave, I found out that I was happy when I didn't have to go to work. And so I've decided that I'm leaving. This is since the 16th of August. I have met with the leader. This is what he announced to us. I've met with the leader of the opposition. I've met with the president. And I didn't get to write my letter because yesterday, that was the 15th, I had to go to my mother-in-law's funeral. So the letter will be going out today, which is the 16th. Now, in all that time, nothing else was said about Steve Surge Bally demitting office. At the subsequent meetings of GECOM, the 23rd and the 30th, which was the last meeting that we had of August, on the 16th, when Dr. Surge Bally announced that he was leaving, he said, my last meeting will be the 30th of August because I'll be proceeding on 3 months' leave prior to demitting office on the 30th of November. So as far as I'm concerned, as a member of the commission, the chairman of GECOM is on leave. During those 3 meetings, we fell over ourselves trying to talk about what would happen in the 3 months while there is a chairman of GECOM but not at work. Because without a chairman, and there is no provision anywhere for a deputy chairman. There's a provision for a temporary chairman in case the chairman becomes ill or can't serve because of whatever reason. And to get a temporary chairman, you have to go through the same exercise that you go through. President has to get a list of 6 names, choose one not unacceptable to him, you know, all of that thing that the Constitution says. But the chairman is on leave. He agreed that if there is an urgent need, he will come out to a meeting if a decision has to be taken about something. So we are left to understand that there can be no meetings of the commission because the chairman is on leave. And we have had no meetings of the commission since the 30th of August. However, during that period, I've had cause to call the chairman, and I call on his cell phone because as far as I'm concerned, he's on leave. Lo and behold, one day I call on the cell phone and I'm told he's in a meeting with the CEO. I said, what? The CEO is also on leave because we approved his 40 or 42 days leave before we, a good time ago. So the CEO is also on leave, the chairman is on leave, but the 2 of them are at a meeting at GECOM. And then I said to the person who answered the phone, could you have him call me back when the meeting is finished? And so I got a call later in the afternoon, this was the morning. His secretary calls to say, hold for commissioner, hold for chairman. So chairman was in his office. So my question to him is, what are you doing in the office? You're on leave. Amazingly, the chairman says to me, I don't even know what I'm doing here myself. Now, this is the chairman of GECOM talking to a commissioner. This is the kind of response you get, which is a non-response. I don't even know what I'm doing here. And my subsequent information, and I've been checking on a daily basis, is that the chairman is in office more days than he's out. My information also tells me that CEO goes to the office even though he's on leave. And there are regular meetings between the two. What am I to understand from that? Is that the chairman does not want to have commission meetings because apparently he's uncomfortable. These three commissioners apparently make him uncomfortable. We ask too many questions. We ask for too many things that are secret. And so he's more comfortable without a commission meeting. That's what I have to conclude. And I am not libeling anybody. I'm saying this is my conclusion. I even wondered whether they need 3 months to sanitize the place before a new chairman is appointed. Because if you have a cult and a bastion that is impenetrable, and somebody else is going to, the door is going to have to be open to somebody else to come in there, then you don't want them find nothing to, to sully your good name, and so you're probably doing, these are suspicions that are normal for a rational person to come to. Not that they're true. But this kind of behavior leads people to distrust. And there is a national distrust of GECOM. This whole thing. And then I read, and this is what worries me, and that is why I brought this article. I read that Surge Valley has indicated to government his readiness to demit office. Now, that is not what Surge Valley told us. He told us he is resigning. He's demitting office. He's going on leave. 3 months. This report says he has indicated his readiness to demit office. And he has recommended a draft of measures to reform the commission. Now, this man was there for 15 years. Why hasn't he reformed or structured or done what he had to do in 15 years? How long does it take? Me, when I assumed the post of Minister of Human Services, when I was being sworn in, and my president said to me, Bibi, I would be very happy if in your 5 years you sanitize the old age pension register. I said, Mr. President, I don't need 5 years to do something like that. I don't even need a year. And we did it in less than a year. We found all the culprits who had all kinds of, things and so on. People were dismissed in so much that the late Honorable Debbie Backer had to accuse me of dismissing 18, forgive me, this is how she said it in Parliament. Bibi Shadik dismissed 18 black people. I said, well, who you want me to dismiss? Only they just walk there. So, the thing is that you find these wickedness and you do what you have to do. Fine. Now he says he is now recommending a raft of measures to reform the commission. A man who spent 15 years, since 2001, and he's proud of saying I served here 15 years. And now he's recommending measures for who to do, to reform the commission, which he believes is at times hamstrung by political brinksmanship. Now those are very nice words, but at every meeting, I always had cause to remind the chairman of GECOM Commission, who at times would blurt out things like, at the EXCO meeting of the PPP on this date, this was said. I said, how do you know that? Somebody from EXCO reports to you? This is the brinksmanship the chairman exhibits at GECOM meetings. And accusing people of, well, you know what? If I was nominated to serve on GECOM as a commissioner by the leader of the opposition, I have to report to the leader of the opposition. And I have to understand what the opposition's thrust has to be with regards to GECOM. How else can I do my job? So I'm not cowed by anybody telling me I have to report somewhere. That's part of what I have to do. So he's talking about political brinksmanship. Anybody challenges Suraj Valley, it's a political statement. So he says that. I don't doubt he said that. And now this is the part that bothers me. However, the government, while accepting Surge Valley's position, has insisted on him creating the platform for seamless transition of his successor. What does that mean? That we're going to have two chairmen of the commission serving at once, so one going to hand over and seamlessly give to the other? That's not what the Constitution envisages. But that is what is said in this article. And according to sources, government has made it clear, and this is the English that Chronicle writes, and I don't know who edits this thing. It says according sources. I was a teacher of maths and English. There should be a two between there. According sources, government has made it clear to Surge Valley that effective on the day of him demitting office will be the date of the assumption of office, the swearing in of a new chairman. Now, if the government has told Surge Valley that, I'm not saying the government has, but if the government has told Surge Valley that, then the government has a duty to inform the leader of the opposition that we need you to submit your list of 6 names from which the president can choose, according to the provisions of the Constitution, a person who is not unacceptable to the president to be appointed. And as far as I'm concerned, that should be done in the 3 months that Surge Valley is purportedly on leave. As far as my understanding is, and I spoke to the leader of the opposition up to last Saturday, he has been told no such thing yet. Additionally, the government has insisted that all arrangements and decisions be made to ensure that the Secretariat is stable and that the work program of the Commission continues seamlessly. Now, that can't happen if there are no meetings of the Commission. And the chairman is on leave, so there is no meeting of the Commission. And members of the press, I'd like you to bring this to the attention of the Guyanese public. People need to know this. What happens in GECOM must not be a secret to the most important stakeholders, the voters. Surge Valley has been at the helm of GECOM since 2001. So, our problem here is that we as commissioners of GECOM are ready and willing to serve, to attend all meetings, to help make all decisions. But if the chairman does not call any meeting, then we cannot serve. I don't know if Surge Valley told the government that he's on leave. And while he's on leave, he can't hold meetings. I know for a fact that Sayers is a nice child. He doesn't make Surge Valley too uncomfortable very often. But Ropes and I make him uncomfortable at every single meeting we attend. And sometimes those meetings degenerate into all kinds of, loud shouting and so on especially between Surge Valley and Ropes, who I understand knew each other long before one became chairman and one became GECOM commissioner. The thing is, Surge Valley is uncomfortable at the GECOM meeting. So he has found a way to not have GECOM commission meetings. I'm going on leave. So he's not holding any meetings. So there is no decision that can be made at GECOM because the commissioners are not meeting. And the nation needs to know that. I would like to think that in the year that we were there, we made him so uncomfortable to lead him to the decision to leave. In fact, that's one thing I might claim success for. I don't know. I hope it was, though. But if the government is truly saying these things that are in the Chronicle, then it is they have to insist that meetings be held. However, the meetings should be held. After the chairman announced that he was going on 3 months' leave, I spoke to the former head of the Presidential Secretariat and the former advisor to the President on governance. And I'm informed that Steve Surge Valley has no contract. So what sends him on 3 months' leave? Only God knows. I thought he had a contract, and I thought that contract allowed for 3 months leave, end of contract, end of whatever leave. I'm told he has no contract. But you know, like everything else at GECOM, that's a secret. So I can't even find that out. I've asked for access to something they call a pool, a database of people that they call on to work temporary. No. Why do you want to see that? I've asked for names of people who work there in order to do my duty. We are told no. We have gone there and asked that we get, as a board, monthly reports from the secretariat on activities, you know, what they've done in a month. In a whole year, we have received exactly two sets of reports. Exactly two in a whole year. That is how GECOM operates. Anything that has to be done, yeah, take your word, Commissioner. I hear you, Commissioner. But you know what? Commissioner has to go to the newspapers to read who is returning officer, who is deputy returning officer. Commissioners are not, they're not privy to those information. They don't know how these things are done. They read it in the papers, at least these three commissioners. And you ask for something, and then you have to remind them at 3 successive meetings before you get a partial response. So, ladies and gentlemen of the media, I thought that after 1 year of Robeson and I being on the commission, and a little more than a year of SACE being there, we should report to the people of Guyana through you of what GECOM is, what GECOM should be, and what GECOM is not. And the fact that the commission has not met since the 30th of August and is not likely to meet until a new chairman is appointed. Thank you. I'd like to ask Robeson if he has anything he wants to add.
Yes, thank you, Comrade BB. I think, looking back at our year, that the most obvious perception we have of the operations of GECOM is that, particularly at the top, the organization is dysfunctional, is badly run, and every effort is being made at the level of the chairman to stymie any efforts at good governance of the organization. You've heard much of what goes on there in terms of preventing or avoiding the providing of information, and the last resort, I guess, of creating a situation where there are no meetings of the commission. I have particularly weighed in on this issue at our last 2 meetings to say that how could we have an organization of this kind which has statutory meetings every Tuesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoons at 1300 hours. How could the organization run without meetings? And we were being told, well, being bullied, which is a typical response to the questions, either to obfuscate, avoid, bully, or treat with contempt the questions or the issues which are raised. That, well, the chairman is on leave, and so there's no need for meetings of the commission. A position I disagreed with. In fact, at one point I said, well, if the chairman is on leave, let us appoint committees, or let's have co-chairs. Let a member from each side come and chair a meeting of the commission, so that at least we are informed. And perhaps if there's an urgent matter, a meeting of the commission could be called with the presence of the chairman, who would then come out on an important issue. I'm sure that everyone would agree that the procurement issues which are being mentioned in the press over the last 2 weeks or so are of urgent public interest. Again, the perception is that there is thoroughgoing corruption in procurement at GECOM. The issues which are now out there, we had one way or the other mentioned them or raised issues or had bilaterals in respect of them. But there's also the other issue of the procurement of ballot papers for the 2016
That's a big
local and regional government elections. And we have been requesting, demanding, entreating that we get reports, that we get the information, and that an investigation be launched in respect of that procurement. And to date, I don't think we have any document with which to deal with that matter. It's been sliding all the time. You're not, oh, we forgot. Oh, did you write a report? Oh, you didn't? Oh, well, you still have to write it. Oh, I don't know that I'm supposed to ask him to write a report. He should write one himself. I don't have to ask him to write a report. So I think working in government and being at the level of Minnesota for many years, that GECOM is indeed the worst run organization that I've been associated with. And the rot starts at the top. The rot starts at the top, and that is where the problem is. And I don't think that if there is proper investigations conducted, that there'll be any room to hide for those who are involved in the various procurements and the ongoing allowance at various levels of that commission of runnings. And both sides of the commission, whether you want, and we describe it as a bipartisan commission, both sides are aware of these issues. Both sides have raised issues, questions on these matters and concerns about these matters before. So, going forward, I don't think that the chairman has any locus standi anymore at GECOM. I think he should go now. I think he should go now. If he's unwilling to hold meetings where questions can be put and we don't have answers, that the commission is in default of its responsibility and of its activities. It's not transparent in respect of governance of its mandate, in respect of its mandate. Of course, not every person or every manager may be involved or have issues with respect to things there. But there's a thoroughgoing cross-cultural, cross-links at all levels there with respect of procurement issues. That is what information we've been told and we've been given. And we have to clean it up, to pair it, and to make it work and function in the interest of the people of the country, of all the people of the country. And that is where it's extremely important. GECOM cannot be relied to carry out its function if the perceived levels of corruption are allowed to continue in the organization. It cannot fulfill its mandate because the thoroughgoing compromise at various levels of the organization will not make it fulfill its mandate. Thank you.
Thanks, Robeson. Before I ask Sace to make a few comments, if he has to make any comments, I'd like to address an issue that came up at our last meeting. The issue about renewing the contract of the CEO, which comes to an end in March. It is my opinion that there is a move to have an approval now. Proper procedure says 3 months before the end of a contract, somebody, and the contract says that in itself, indicates that I'm willing to stay and all of that. These things make me, and you know, if the CEO were not on leave, officially on leave, as a responsible member of that commission, I would have asked for a meeting of the commission to meet and decide to send the CEO on administratively while the audit was going on. But we know the CEO is on leave. But apparently being on leave doesn't mean that he can't go into the office because he goes. So all these things are so irregular. Thank
I
you.
might add, sorry, that I've been informed that 20 files related to procurement information went missing from GECOM last week. That is the information I have. I don't know the veracity of it, but these are things you're hearing from people who ought to know, people who are not irresponsible. So there's obviously a long history of problems in there with procurement, I guess along with other things.
Thanks, Rosen.
In respect of the CEO's going on leave and his renewal, and the renewal of his contract itself is badly written,
Yeah. Yeah.
terribly written. There's no rush or need to go into
Right now.
to renew his contract. And in any event, these issues of procurements, investigations, court matters, and all these things have to be weighed in respect of the continuation of the CEO or any other manager that is there at GECOM. There's no way that you could approve new things, new extension of contracts or new contracts or so on, without proper, deliberate,
Yeah.
dispassionate appraisals of those who are under consideration for contracts or renewals. There's no way that it could be done. I don't see how it could be done properly.
What will have to follow is that when the when the auditors make the reports, then the CEO and the chairman and whoever will have to answer the specific things that are raised. That is what the commission, that is when we'll be asking for a meeting to see what answers they're giving. All of those things, there are a lot of questions that have to be answered, and we are going to be demanding answers. Commissioner Gunraj has indicated he doesn't really want to make a statement to you, so the floor is now open to questions from you. No, you need to get your name properly.
Ronald, Ghan Daily News.
Ghan Daily News, okay.
Ronald who?
Ronald Singh.
Go ahead.
Okay. Would I be correct to say that because of the party's continuing protest action, is the reason that the GECOM chairman has signaled his intention to resign because he is not on a contract?
I don't know what is correct. Just now I said I would like to think that it is because we made him uncomfortable in meetings. He probably is uncomfortable with a lot of things. That could be one of them. Yes?
I've related kind of things. I have two questions. One, you mentioned the chairman doesn't have a contract. Could you expound on that a little more, just for some clarity? And secondly, if you're saying that the CEO is on leave, will still access the office while an investigation is ongoing, you hinted at the possibility of asking for a meeting, sending on administrative leave. Since you have information that he is at the office, are you going to move in that direction?
First thing. What was the thing you said first?
The contract for the chairman.
Oh, yeah. Because I've been in government, I know that the matters pertaining to GECOM were handled through the Office of the President. And approvals for stuff would have had to be given by the head of Presidential Secretariat. So when I said that the chairman said he's proceeding on 3 months' leave, the former head of the Presidential Secretariat, the person of Dr. Roger Luncheon, says, but he doesn't have a contract. He never had a contract. And I would think Dr. Luncheon would know. And I was also told by the person who was the president's advisor on governance and who was intimately involved, that the chairman of the GECOM doesn't have a contract. That is not to say that within those walls that I keep banging my head on and we keep banging our heads on, there isn't some piece of paper that was concocted, whatever. But the people who would have had to give approval and who would have had to sign the contract say there was no contract. That's my information. So that was to talk about the 3 months leave. Yes.
Just one comment on that. Most importantly, we as commissioners have never seen a contract insofar as it relates to the employment of the chair.
Of the chairman.
I'm getting two different issues. The one that you're saying you haven't seen a contract.
No.
No, there's not two issues. It's one position. What Commissioner Shaddick is saying is that the information she has received does not lend to the belief that there is a contract. I am saying, additionally, as commissioners, we have never seen a contract insofar as it relates to the employment of the chairman.
Have you requested to see any sort of documentation?
We have requested a lot of documentation that we'd never seen. The second thing about the CEO being sent on administrative leave, as far as we are concerned and as a commission, we took a decision on the application of the CEO for approval for him to go on his annual leave. In fact, this followed a long journey of approving the CEO and the DCO to get payments in lieu of leave that they never took over the years. And we asked for documentation to show where their leave, it was approved for them not to go on leave. So that we would understand that this not going had some sort of approval. No documentation could be provided. It is always my firm belief that human beings need rest, need a period of rest after working. And GECOM is a stressful place to work. And anybody who has worked there for 11 months should take their month's leave, because then they can come back rejuvenated and do better work. And that has always been our position on the commission. So because of that position, this year, the CEO applied for, and we approved his leave. Because according to Robeson, if an organization cannot send their head on leave and have somebody who can act in the position, the organization is in a woeful place. You have to have somebody, who, my doctor tells me if you work, you'll fall flat on your face. When I fall flat on my face, what happens? Somebody has to be able to do that. So leave is necessary. So after the last meeting we had, the CEO was proceeding on 40 or 42 days leave. Annually.
But the reality
So
is
we cannot ignore the fact that we approved his leave for him to go on leave, and that he is on leave. The thing is that you have to know the nature of what we call whistleblowers. And you have to know the nature of people who will tell you the man is here every day. And I've spoken to him in his office on his office phone. Me. So I know he's in the office. I don't know if he's there every day, but I've spoken to either of them, on the office phone. And I did that deliberately, just to make sure, that yes, I could have gotten them in the office. But junior people who were, in fact, because of this culture that exists, if they go to say something, they might find themselves out of a job, or they might find themselves transferred somewhere. That's a culture that exists. You should see the level of nepotism and the level of that we get complaints about. And you take these complaints and you ask, and they say, no, it's not true. The father says so, the brother says so, all that kind of stuff. This is the kind of brick wall I'm talking about that we have. So, properly, we cannot call a meeting to send a man on administrative leave. He is on leave. He's on annual leave. After the 40 days. And if the audit is still ongoing, then we can properly ask for a meeting to be held and to take a decision for him to go on administrative. But I'll tell you something else. On that commission, there are 3 of us sitting on this side, there are 3 sitting on that side, and there is a chairman who, without exception, votes with the 3 sitting opposite me. So, if it is in the interest of the chairman that the man not go on administrative leave, then he will not go. But that doesn't mean to say we will not try. But we can't try before his annual leave is over.
And what could be done to prevent him? Because this is a huge investigation involving millions of dollars, and he's accessing the office, possibly accessing files that could turn out to be evidence. What can be done at the level of the commission to more or less somehow prevent him from accessing the office during the course of the investigation?
One of the reasons I asked earlier this week again, I called the office and I eventually got Dr. Surjibali, who was said to be in meetings, that I was requesting meetings was to have a lockdown on documentation, files, and access into those various information. He refused, again, point blank, to have a meeting. I don't know if we have to go there
He's on
and
leave.
demonstrate or make noise or behave badly or protest to get a meeting of a constitutional commission. This is a constitutional commission, and the urgent public matters and administrative matters which are in the full view of the meeting the public with respect to the commission, and you can't get a meeting of the commission. One of the things we had asked previously, and it's still on the table as far as I'm concerned, is that the commissioners are facilitated on both sides with respect to have offices,
And that is denied.
clerical services, and other things to be able to facilitate the work of the commissioners. That was refused. He apparently doesn't want to have the commissioners around, to have an office or a place
That's
to
why he
meet
said he's
or
going on leave.
discuss or so on, because as Comment BB talks about the brick wall that we're being stonewalled with respect to these issues, the bullying and the contempt that is shown to the commission and the commissioners. So it's to me a very serious matter, and I as I said before, I don't see. And maybe it's not surprising that since all these questions are being raised up over the year, that the chairman has indicated that he is prepared to walk
We'd like to think so.
eventually, or just now. We need to get this matter and this organization cleared up and into a healthy position.
What we would like is that this information reaching the electorate, reaching the people of Guyana, that the people of Guyana have the power to make anything happen. And the people of Guyana will do something. I mean, the commissioners, the three of us, we can ask. But I don't think it's fit and proper for the three commissioners to turn up at GECOM's gate without not having been invited to a meeting. We can't have a meeting without the chairman. The chairman doesn't want to have a meeting. The thing is that the people of this country who have a vested interest in a properly functioning elections commission have that much power in their hands, and we are giving them this information. That's the purpose of us being here, that this information goes to the public by whatever means, in print, by audio, by radio, by television, whatever. You represent a wide cross-section here, by Facebook and whatever, that the people get this information. We don't, at least I don't, profess to have all the answers. But what we are prepared to do is to keep at it and keep militant and do what we have sworn to do within the constraints of, of the commission itself. I hear, Mr. Lane, and I hear this thing about, locking the man out and so on. We don't have that power right now. That has to be a decision of a commission. Okay? Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Martin Haley, Kaiser News.
Uh-huh.
One, firstly, on the matter of you were saying just now that more than often the commissioner, so the chairman, votes with the side opposite you.
Not more than often, every time.
Well, okay, every time. Are there measures that you're,
And he apologizes for doing so. To us. Yeah.
how do you suggest to fix that? Because let's say we get a new chairman.
Uh-huh.
It happens in the reverse. Let's say that new chairman votes more than often with your side against the other.
Mhm.
How can we fix that kind of dispensation within the commission?
You know what? As I said, I don't claim to have all the answers. I can only tell you what has happened in the year that I've been there. But when people take an oath to serve without fear or favor, affection or ill will, then one would expect that the person that the president chooses, which is not unacceptable to him, will be a fair person. And I'll tell you what, chairman of GECOM before Surge Valley did things. In fact, there were occasions when representatives of government and opposition sat and horse traded over who would serve as in every single officer. All right, this one we take it, you want the, and chairman of GECOM facilitated those kinds of process. That is when the commission observed the Constitution, the appointment of temporary and all other staff. This whole thing has become, and every time you question, we have taken a decision, because 161A2 says the Election Commission may, by directions in writing and subject to such conditions, delegate any of its powers under paragraph 1. But it says to any or one or more members of the commission. Apparently what has happened, they're saying we delegate these things to the Steve Lowenfields and so on of this world. I don't agree with that. The thing is that, and we can't see the writing. Oh, we took decisions about that a long time ago. Oh, you were not here, you knew to this. Well, after a year, I'm not new anymore. That's the position I have. So when I told you from the beginning that we keep hitting our head against a brick wall, it is a brick wall. Because they have this cult-like behavior that what happens there mustn't be breached and nobody must know. And so the CEO going into the office and the chairman going into the office while they are officially on leave is part of that behavior. And I think personally, and I'm sure Robeson and Says agree with me, that they are on leave just so they don't have to have a GECOM meeting, a commission meeting. They're uncomfortable with the questions we're asking. Yes.
I'm reminded that we've had now infamous discussions on the rules of order for the conduct of meetings.
Oh yes, we had a big story.
And we've had a long discussion where I suggested we use Robert's Rules of Order, which relates to parliamentary and business meeting corporate practices, be used, or to adopt the specific parliamentary practice at Parliament, and to have items for the agenda, regular items for agenda to be responded to, and for matters coming to the Commission for there to be proper board papers, board documents. These are usually missing. I think the last time we met, we had a request for the spending of billions of dollars on one sheet of paper without no memo to the board, to the Commission, with respect to the expenditures and what they really are for. No backup documentation. I'm ashamed to say that it's really, really badly run. And I think the only reason it's been badly run because people have compromised themselves there and are trying to avoid what should ultimately happen to what has been going on there. In every instance where logical recourse or response should be done or taken with respect to issues, what comes out basically from the position of the chair defies any logic, defies common sense. And this is not a matter for one side or the other in themselves, but it's a matter which has to be of concern to everyone in the country, because it's taxpayers' money which are being spent. And as Ms. Shadiq said, we've sworn to oaths here, and it is a constitutional commission. It's a national disgrace.
You can understand what our meeting discussions consist of, whether or not we should follow Robert's rules and not what the the reports we should get. Yes. Any other questions? Yes. Yes.
More on the issue of the spending taxpayers' money and procurement practices. Can the Commission, in terms of oversight on spending, how is it that all those millions of dollars have been spent and no question was raised on where these, particularly the radios, the source and quality and stuff like that?
All right.
Well,
Let me address one piece and say so you'll take this. Prior to the 2016 budget, prior to, only very recently, GECOM was not a Schedule 3 entity which draws it from. So now the commission has to give approval for spending. Prior to that, approval was given outside of the commission. You know, they had to go through some other place. It wasn't, you know, the commission itself didn't, because it was an agency that took money from the regular budget. Okay, and you had to have approvals from yours. And I think much of that approval was from the head of Presidential Secretariat's office. But I'll tell you what, while we were in government, I always knew that GECOM was regarded by government as a special entity that you didn't question too much, because they're going to say you're doing it and you want to stymie the election process. You want to stymie them from getting things done. So more often than not, if GECOM wanted lamps, you know, and they said we have so many polling places and we want so many LED lamps or whatever it is, you know, that would have been approved. But nobody's saying that you must go collect LED lamps that don't work. That has to do with the people inside there, not with the person giving the thing. Now, however, the commission has to give approval for stuff like that. Okay? It's within, because of the change. Good? Yeah, you wanted to say something?
Commissioner Shadid, in her opening statement, gave a timeline as to the period she has served on the commission, 1 year to be exact. I was appointed to that commission on the 3rd of February 2015, which was a few months prior to the May 2015 elections. I can say here, without fear of contradiction, that from the 3rd of February 2015 to the execution and conclusion, well, I want to say partial conclusion of the 2015 elections, because I don't want to raise another ant's nest here, but to date, the commission has not received from the Secretariat a report on the 2015 elections, nor the 2016 local government elections. Another issue that we have raised almost ad nauseum. But the point I'm making is, from the time I joined that commission to the conclusion of the 2015 elections, and I've been present at every single statutory meeting held of the commission from the time of appointment, special meetings, and everything to the present time. I've never been absent from any meetings. It cannot be said that I missed that discussion. At not one single meeting was any discussion raised in relation to the procurement, use, or any other matter whatsoever touching and concerning the radios. Even when the issue of communication was tangentially dealt with at commission meetings prior to the May 15 elections, it did not even become apparent to me, sitting at that commission, that we had procured radios, that radios were intended for use, or any such thing. There was no report whatsoever. There was not even a mention of radios in the period that I just dealt with.
I think you
And
have to.
that also, the other topical issue that I saw appearing in yesterday's newspapers in relation to pliers or nippers, as they are called, that as well has never come to the commission.
Commissioner, you mentioned that you haven't received, Commission haven't received report from the 2015 general elections, neither the 2016. Is there any legal actions that you can take to get these reports out?
The excuse that has been given by the chief elections officer, whose statutory duty it is to produce that report and present it to the commission for deliberation, is that in light of the pending elections petition filed by Ganga Prasad, that the matter has now been attracting the attention of the courts, and the CEO has refused to produce a report claiming that to do so may affect the will affect the evidence that will later have to be adduced in court. We have had extensive discussions on this at the commission level, including providing or coming up with what could be considered a compromise position, that even aspects that are being considered by the courts, if those can be redacted or excluded from the report. And one aspect that we demanded that could not in any way be deemed to be affecting the outcome or otherwise, even the evidence in the court, is the financial aspects. And the recent developments, at least in the press and what has been going on with these audit reports that we've been reading, and like Commissioner Shadik said, the only information we have in relation to that is what we've been reading in the press, is now making us wonder why we can't even get a financial report of the 2015 elections or 2016 elections. In fact, so far as it relates to the 2016 elections, there is absolutely no impediment, none whatsoever, in relation to the production and release of a report in that regard. And from March 18 to now, 6 months and a few days have elapsed, and we cannot have the benefit of that report, despite several demands.
The excuse is a vacuous excuse. It's a vacuous excuse offered from the Secretariat with the chairman's support.
Oh yes,
Because
the
there
chairman supports the CEO.
Elections commissions all over the world, and elections have been held, and they are resorts to the court by parties who feel offended or upset at the results, but they have produced reports of their elections. Whether we suggested that a preliminary report could be provided, and then a final report could be provided with respect to these elections, but there is an insistence that really no report should be provided, and that's sad. It's really sad.
Yes, any other questions?
No.
Yeah.
Is there any speculation of the names that will be presented to the president?
I am not aware of that.
Fortunately,
You'd have
that
to
is not
ask.
within our remit.
You have to ask the leader of the opposition that when next you see him at the press conference. And there being no other questions, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We seek your help in getting these issues to the public, to the people who matter. Thank you very much.